A Piece in Four Parts, by Mike Pfau. A painter, a poet, a dancer, only but need call himself an artist, and the whole world is open to them. Alan Caprow. Art has always been an attempt to become alive. Representational depictions of nature, emotional interpretations of personal and social instances, always bound by the medium, constrained by presentation. Art objects required the participants to construct the reality with the context of the image. Art is a reduction life existing with relation to the principles of its environment. In 1965, Bruce Nauman produced the minimalist piece titled A Cast of the Space Under My Chair, along with the majority of minimalist sculpture. This set out to change the hermeneutics of experience, the mode of perception and the location of the object in the metaphysical environment. Nauman's sculpture deconstructs the formal relationships involved in viewing by utilizing the participants' longing to complete the object of the chair, requiring them to construct the object from the negative space surrounding the cast. Further, the chair is the artist's chair, which skillfully directs the viewer to investigate what constitutes the validity of art. At this point, tangible object is only a locus for jumping into the context created by the negative space, or commonly known as the environment. The non-art finished Nauman's piece. The importance of the negative space is important because it is beyond the object, it is the realm in which we exist. The object no longer is detached and sanctioned from the external world. The meaning of the piece is found beyond the object in our world. The participant acknowledging their presence leads to the inquiry of individual effect on the works and society's effect on the individuals. Essentially, art became the format for presenting the inquiries that lead to decisions. In 1967, Edward Kienholz produced a work titled The Cement Store No. 1, a document that contained instructions on how to locate, present, and fill a store in the United States that fit the type with cement. The work exists as a concept and idea documented on paper. The artist became a lifestyle and mode of living, and the thoughts became a medium for direct expression. If you call yourself an artist, your thoughts are art. So crucially presented when Robert Barry introduced the piece in 1970. The piece was just a statement that read, something near in place and time but to me not yet known. The artist's existence creates the potential for uncovering a piece from life. Therefore, the mere existence of thought makes art presented if the author so grounds it in the art realm. Beyond the realization that the art object occupies the same reference frame as the life Barry's piece say that the existence of the individual became art. Living is art. But society must reinforce you calling yourself an artist. So if living is art, then the concept of individual and the modes of propagation and communication fall under inquiry. And are the aesthetic to life, how we arrange ourselves in them. Technology and art linked in that they are the same reduce but coming from opposite ends of the intellectual spectrum. Technology reduces towards efficiency mainly considering time, and art reduces toward technology. Max Weber. Rational, Cage. The individual thoughts can be considered as art meant that art objects became media objects. Media is the means of communication. The incorporation of current technological advantages means that art being life, means its avenues of communication must be those. The art object now becomes a media object. Robert Smithson's Spiral Jetty in 1970 punctuates the concepts of the media object. The Spiral Jetty existed as a constructed spiral in the Great Salt Lake in Utah, a documentary film, documentary photography, and assorted writings. The jetty was an idea organized through various means to represent a holistic idea. Smithson was not only concerned with the construction of the place but of the spiral jetty as an idea. Then once released it became a topic of discourse augmenting the completeness of the media object. The ability to perceive and experience the object in multiple ways became necessary for a presence in an oversaturated culture. So media defines the system in which the individual artist can exist. The artist's lifestyle and decisions being the context and ironically the media being the medium. Media in the new art form of lifestyles to be investigated, the same as a painting in 19th century salon. Thus far we have used the individual and assumed it to be capable of decision-making. In 1981 Barbara Kruger presented the work, and on it a hand held a card and the card read, I shop therefore I am, the popular card see and quote superimposed onto the very action of consumerism. The point jumped from to a form of currency as a placeholder for object, and became the gauge of potential. Currency controls media which is a social communication, so the individual is art produced from by media directed by currency. The individual is a paradox, the individual organizes a multitude of ready-made existences and the aesthetic is in the arrangement. Currency is art, otherwise art would not have to be categorized. Rational organization and the pursuit of knowledge. But what next? How does this model advance beyond the last century? Calling a specific era modern or postmodern is strange due to the fact that in a given amount of time, years from now when something new arises it will be modern for that particular time period. The notion of modern relies on relativity. The total experience. Early paintings strived for believability in order to subject the view to an experience. Art will never separate from experience. It cannot. Art is at first a painting, then it become anything. People criticize art for this liberal release, saying that anything goes, but that is not the point. Art was always designed to mimic life, and a critical point was reached when artwork was understood to be life. You don't sip hot tea because you remember you have burned yourself. You produce judgments and conclusions. Art is the mere format for displaying these decisions. It is recognizing you don't sip hot tea, so that you can sip hot tea so the decision can retain the binary. The reason for calling an era modern is derived from the amount of information sharing capabilities of the society at that point. There has never before a method for such a sharing of global ideas. It was only proper to document the time as modern because the very possibility of the breadth of documentation was an art form in itself. Ego took over and attempted to blindly proclaim it as the best that was humanly capable because the medium was so new and unfamiliar. The automobile, airplane, radio, television, the internet, all the reason for the modernism genre, a genre that could not be properly critiqued until time uncovered the workings behind the mechanisms of faster, global communication. It all had to be accounted for. An individual is now nothing more than the collective construction of that definition. We look to act from social definition, a previous approved conception, so we can build from those conceptions. Our definitions are pulled from a social context and the communication in that social context. With the internet of today being a powerful factor affecting society, I only found it appropriate to pull my definition from that context. I cannot alone simply the internet, but Google has made an attempt at so I pulled their definition of the word art. Search engines rationalize the internet. The internet is an environment with a set of governing principle. The world operated on physics, the internet operates on logic. The human can adapt to exist and live WTH in this environment, synthesizing the two-rule basis, operating within the agreeable and excluding the contradictions. We can communicate in both but touch only in one. Internet is a byproduct of consumerism which delegates the media, which delegates the individual lifestyle as art. Then I found it only proper to extract my definition from the internet, mincing life through the easiest most rational means as possible. Because rational runs the systems of society that define my individuality, so art is rational. A note on the breadth of information we encounter every day and how we must filter it, and methods for doing so. It changes the pace of perception. People are tuned like ISDR envelope, and the patterns of attention explain that when we view something, people are generally assuming that it is considered in a whole and continuous way at a constant pace, but in reality we come in and out of attention that's as unique to use and defines how we interpret objects differently from other people. If you were to read this text all the way through, you would get a different read that if you read it falling in and out of attention. ADHD is a byproduct of media and modern society. ADHD is the coping mechanism of modern sensory input. Each image is presented to the viewer approximately 12,000 times slower than the Google server appropriated the images to your browser. The ratio is 400 million images in 0.34. Check this stat, sec to 6 images a sec. As conscious individuals we are always looking for meaning. The justification for driving to the gallery, purchasing the work, standing and spending irreplaceable time in front of some else thoughts. To the writer the text once written must be experienced through reading. The author never again to pass through that pattern of the textual ether to produce a code to connect the mind to another. The beauty is that since our lives are art, the experience of other lives isn't always been the ultimate form of artistic production. The esoteric ideals of postmodern and conceptual art, net art, video art, pace of perception, patterns of attention, and active participation is like viewing the images in sequence. Passive is the superimposed layers, where what you have seen begins to mix with everything else, and at this point you must participate in the meaning of the piece. The whole concept of self must be altered for previous tendencies in art to be altered. Depth and surface models, surface meaning to force the viewer to participate. The variety of way a viewer can view a video on the web is amazing. They can pause on image, they can search and take hold of what they want to experience, not just be fed what I give them. This text is art, because .it works as communicate audios.